some issues. So, yeah.
There we go.
All right, she's got you.
Okay.
Are you good? Okay, great, awesome. I need your audio visual.
Hello?
Welcome, ladies. Maybe a little low. Maybe push it back. Sorry, so we, because we're recording these videos, there's a few minutes between the first video and the second, you know, it has to decompress and record and then upload. So I'm sorry, there was a little glitch there. We'll hopefully get better at that. So welcome everyone. Here. Can you guys hear us okay? Awesome, fantastic. All right, Erin's gonna be working our AV and then I'm gonna get going into mountain biking fun. So first off, disclaimer, so I'm Emily Hacken. We forgot to introduce ourselves. This is my friend Erin Pine. We've mountain biked a bit, but we are not bike repair ladies and we have never worked in a shop and we're just doing this for fun on our own. Our bikes, the bikes that we have here are not state of the art. They are a little rinky dinky. So that could be good and bad, I guess, for today. But we're just gonna go over some basic stuff and hopefully have some fun. So first off, if you, I'm gonna just be going through a lot of stuff that's on that outline that I uploaded. So feel free to look at that if you feel like we're going way too fast. All the stuff I tried to type up for you. So the first thing, before every ride, it's a good thing to do a check on your bike, which I know that nobody ever does, but it's a good thing to at least do that. So want to check the tire pressure, and the tire pressure is checked, it'll state it on your bike. So check and make sure that your pressure is appropriate and that you don't have any flats, which is usually the limiting factor for every trip. And then check your brakes. If they're a little spongy, I have a full suspension bike that's like 20 years old that's super spongy, and it's because there's a bubble in that black cable of your brakes. So when I'm pushing on that cable, instead of pushing that brake fluid and causing, you know, that pressure in the brake, it's compressing that bubble. And so it's not getting any pressure down. So what you can do is you can flip your bike up on the back tire and smack it a bunch of times, or flip it upside down and push it a bunch of times, or you might have to go to the shop and of course have them bleed it and make sure there's no bubbles in there. So if you feel a spongy brake, that's probably what's going on. Also check your shifting. I'm sure we've all been on rides where it clicks and clicks and clicks. Those are your derailleurs, and that means they're off for some reason. So unless you know how to fix derailleurs, I would probably just get that service and make sure that's going on, because that's going to damage your chain, it's going to damage your cogs and all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that the derailleur is going well. Also, if your chain is skipping, if you notice that, one of your links in your chain might be frozen, and that's actually not too hard to fix. A chain, if you've ever looked at your bike chain, is a whole bunch of links put together, and if one of them is really stiff, you can actually take a chain tool, and we'll show you this in a little bit, but put pressure on that one of those joints just a little bit and see if you can wiggle it and wiggle it free. You can also use lube to help, you know, help loosen that up. That's a really easy fix if that's all it is. Also check your pedals, make sure that you, in my house, we gotta make sure we have pedals because my husband likes to switch them all around. But there's regular flat pedals and then there's the clip-in pedals. So if you obviously have a clip-in pedal, you wanna make sure it's clean and you don't have junk in there, whatever. Also check your fit to your bike. That's a great thing to know, is that your bike is fit appropriately. When we borrow bikes from other people, a lot of times it's not fit to you and you're like, I don't care, whatever. But if you've got your own bike, it's good to know that it's fit to you. It's called the cockpit. This section from where your handlebars are to your seat post, all this area is called your cockpit. You want to make sure that this distance is right and this distance is right, all those kind of things. So a bike shop can show you how to take care of that and make sure it's fit appropriately. The easiest thing you can do at home, at least, is to make sure that your bike's seat is appropriately high, too low. When going up a ride, you want to make sure that you've got as much pedal extension as possible out of your leg. So you want to make sure that your foot is almost, when you put your toe on that pedal, that you almost have a fully extended leg. Not quite, but you almost do. When you're going downhill, you want to drop your seat so that you can ride off that back seat if you need to, in case you're dropping off some big bumps and stuff. So a good high seat on the way up, and then you can drop it on the way down. Checking your bolts and screws. You're not gonna do this every ride, but I understand if things are rattling in there, try and find out what's rattling. A lot of things you can just tighten. Something, if you don't know what something is, probably don't get in there and tighten it. But a lot of things, if you like use up YouTube videos and stuff like that, and you know what they are, and you can get in there and tighten some bolts and stuff and screws. Check your axles. Make sure that you have a good axle. If you've been using bike or kid carriers, a lot of times you're pulling the axles in and out of those things. Make sure they're fitting appropriately. I have a really old full suspension bike that has a shock that had a top and bottom clamp over the axle. And a long time ago, I lost the bottom clamp, and I've been riding for years with just that top. But if I ever hit a really big hit on a rock, there's always a chance that whole wheel could come. So that's dangerous. Don't do that. All right. Also, check your bike after the ride. Clean it if it's gotten all sorts of junky nastiness. Don't use a pressure sprayer or a high spray on your hose. There's a lot of little areas in your bike, anywhere where there's lots of complicated mechanical stuff, you don't want to be spraying in there because you're going to get spraying in the dirt and the junk and stuff into those, all those mechanisms, and we don't want to do that. So sometimes it's just a wet rag, wipe her down, call it good. Cleaning on your chain with a nice wet rag, and then you can lube it with some bike lube and things like that, or chain lube. That helps it look nice and pretty. With the lubing your drivetrain or your chain, one little drop, boop, 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 each link is great, and that's usually all you need. And then I recommend also getting your bike serviced once a year. Just even if it's an awesome bike or a new bike, but if it's an old bike, especially if it's an old bike, just call around, find a good place for good deals and stuff like that. But getting it serviced is a great way to prevent injuries. Because a lot of the stuff that happens to us is just stupid stuff that, like, it was an old chain or whatever that had just happened. So anyway, those are the basics. And now we're gonna just throw you some fun things of just simple fixes and tips to know about your bike. First thing is suspension. A lot of mountain bikes have front suspension, and they're called hardtails. Ones that have dual suspension are called full suspension bikes. There's probably other cool names that I'm not aware of, but that's basically the difference. We're gonna be working with a front suspension bike today, and then I'll also take a look at a full suspension in a little bit here. So when you've got anything with shocks, I just learned this today. A shock has 3 elements. It has an air compressor. It also has, or an air spring, compression, and rebound. So all of your shocks are gonna have 3 components to them. So I'm gonna push this forward for a second. All right. And I'm gonna bring this bike over. All right. So you can see these are the front shocks here. There is a black cap here. This takes care of air, and on this bike it actually even says air. And you would take this cap off, and it just twists. And it has a little valve in here that's like a bike pump valve. It's like a Schrader. So like if you were filling a tire, and you would take air and just, and that adds air to these shocks, which is pretty cool. The other part of the brake is the compression. These are always blue. So if you see anything on your shocks that are blue, that's your compression. And then there's always something that's red, and usually it's on the bottom on front suspension, and that's also your rebound. Essentially, here, let's tilt it up. Awesome. What you need to know is if you're going uphill, we want to have those bike shocks as stiff as possible because we don't want to be losing a lot of our energy with every stroke. When we're going downhill, we want to have them spongy to absorb all that bounce, all the rocks and stuff that we're going over. So our basic thing that we just want to share with you is turn your blue little doobob clockwise to the right when you're going uphill, and then counterclockwise when you're going downhill. Is probably just the simplest way. These have all been, if you want to get really technical and fit the shocks to your body, take it to a shop, and that's what they're going to go, is they're going to adjust their air, they're going to adjust your compression and adjust your rebound to be just perfect for you. So it's worth just asking about if you're into that kind of thing. For a rear suspension bike, I will show you. This is a grossly primitive bike, but it has an adjustment right here on the rear shock. So here's our rear shock, and the adjustment is right here. And I can do this, make the same adjustments on the fly as I can with the front suspension. And the new bikes are even better than these. So, but just so you know, your front and rear shocks have adjustments to make them tighter and looser, depending if you're going uphill or downhill. And that's all we're gonna go into about shocks. All right. All right, now we're gonna get into repairs and fixing things. First off, I'm gonna pull this back away again. All right, I have a table here of really cool things. These are all the things that I recommend every bike person should have. You guys probably already have a lot of this anyway. First thing is a bike repair kit. The things you want in these are Allen wrenches. Those are those hex wrenches. And that's what a lot of the nuts and bolts are that you're going to be using in your bike. Make sure you have something that's got an Allen wrench. Make sure you have things that have the tire. These are called tire levers for changing tires. You've got at least 2 of them. They're really strong. Erin had a recommendation of a certain kind.
Park tools.
Park tools is the name. They're blue. They're really good versions of these. Then, of course, you've got your patches. I really recommend... There is the old school stuff, if you guys remember from the 80s with the glue and the patch and the sandpaper. That's awesome. You can just do, so what you would do is you would, use your little sandpaper, rough up that little spot where the hole is, then use your glue and then put the patch on, put some weight on it. Then if you have the time and you wait for like a half hour or whatever until it sets. Most of the time when you're on the trail, that's great for kid bikes and stuff at home, but if you're on the trail, it's not really gonna work so well. So a lot of patches now, I'm going to show you, and there's probably even cooler ones than this, but just something, it's just like a sticker that's really rough rubber. And you can just throw those on really easy, and we'll get to that in a second. But you want to make sure you got those in your kit as well. And want to make sure you have a chain repair tool. Now, Erin's never had a broken chain. I've never had a broken chain on the trail. You get broken chains from a lot of pressure on a chain and a lot of cross-loading. So old chains, there's always the chance that they could break. And if you have a broken chain on the trail, you're not going anywhere. So it's nice to have a chain tool in your kit. This is a really big, crappy one from Walmart, but there's smaller ones so you can get. I would go ahead and grab one and just have it in your kit just in case. And we'll talk about fixing chains in a second. And then, of course, you always want to have a pump. There's 2 different kinds of pumps. The cool new thing are CO2 cartridges, and you can just buy them like this. And this is what they look like. And then you just screw them in. Let's see if I got my thing. That one was screwed in. No, it's not. You just take the end, push it in here, and screw it in. And then it has a lot of them, they'll have some sort of little pressure relief. So I can just, you can see that has compressed air. And so you just attach it to your wheel and just inflate it super fast. It's nice because it's really fast. If you have fat tire bikes, you might need a couple. And there's sometimes these will malfunction. So I usually would make sure I'd have one of these plus a pump as a backup. And you can just have any sort of, these are just a mini pump. They're great. There's a lot of them. You can get them for like 20 bucks. I would make sure that you always have a pump on your bike at all times. You just never know. If you're a lazy like me and hate fixing flats on the road or on the trail, I always like to have a spare tire or a spare tube in my pack as well. So if something happened and I got a flat, I could just take that tire off, throw in a new tube, pump it up, and then you're off. And you don't have to sit there and fix the flat, find out where the hole is, all that kind of stuff. Great. Okay. So that's just gear, stuff you just want to have in your basic maintenance kit. I also keep money, like a $20 bill. Anything else that you keep in your bike kit, Erin? Super glue, I don't know. Oh, yes, duct tape and zip ties are 2 other things that you can use to fix a lot of things in your bike if you're having to jimmy rig something like that. So, great. So I have a couple funny things I was going to share with you, tips for mountain fixes, and then we're going to fix a flat and change a chain. So first off is if you have a tear in the sidewall of your tire, like there's just a rip. I've never had this happen, but it's a possibility. And the problem is if something cut your tire, your tube is going to start leaking through and bulging through that. So a real quick fix is to deflate the tire a little bit, put in something that can act as a barrier. They had recommended you can use a dollar bill, gum wrapper, just something in there that you can kind of slide in and put your tube, inflate the tube, and that can kind of act as a quick fix repair. Also, if you have no tube and you need to fix, this is a great one. If your tube pops or whatever and you aren't able to inflate it and you've got a long ride out, you can always fill your tire with debris like leaves, and no joke, this was on REI's like tips of the day. Needles and all that kind of stuff, and just fill it full of just junk, just to add some substance to the tire. So hopefully when you ride out, you're not destroying your rim, and at least can have something in there if you need to. Never tried that, but there you go. I'm just passing on that tip. I think those are my 2 tips on the trail. There's a lot of other technical stuff that you can find online, but usually flats and broken chains are the only thing I've really run into problems with. All right, I know you guys all have kids or no kids or were a kid and changed a flat. We're going to show you kind of how to change a flat on these newer bikes and see how it goes. Have patience with us. We discovered some problems when we tried this last time. All right. So I learned a tip on one of the YouTube videos. If you're out in the mountains and you're in a wooded area, you can take, if there's a tree that's about so high and has just a limb that's broken off, you can actually hang your bike on that and use it like a bike repair stand. You hang it like right here. And so you can just have your bike up here and be working on your tire or any other fixes. And that's kind of cool to have that in the mountains. Since we're not outside, we're just in the kitchen, I'm just gonna flip this up. If you're gonna flip a bike upside down on the handlebar, just make sure you don't have anything important. If your shifters or brakes or anything aren't sticking up here, we don't want to damage any of those. All right, here we go. So we're gonna pretend we have a rear flat, just because the rear tires are usually a little bit more tricky. This bike has disc brakes, so that's something also to keep in mind when we're mounting the bike tire back on. So the first thing we want to do is take off the tire. And this bike, each bike is going to have different axles. Some bikes have like a flip release. Those are great. Just flip it and you kind of twist the other screw and you can pull it out. This one doesn't. This one has one that I've got to use a wrench to undo. So look at your bike before you ever get on the trail. Look and make sure so you know which kind you've got, so you know how to. You've got the right tools to take it off. So I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this. All right. So I pulled out the axle there. And another tip is to make sure that this is on the smallest cog. That will help when you put the bike tire back on. So I'm going to pull this off. There we go. Okay, so I've got my deflated tire. Now what I want to do is find out where my valve is. There are 2 different kinds of valves. You've got your Schraders that are the old school big fat black ones that we all had back in the 80s and 90s. The newer ones are called Prestas. They're the long skinny ones. They come with a little bolt on them that we want to make sure that we loosen up. And they also have a little tip on them that you can use. If this is only half inflated, you can push on that little tip, unscrew it a little bit, push on it, and it'll deflate it all the way. So we're going to try and remove these tubes. A lot of them are set really tight. This one was set really, really tight. It's got what's called a beading, which is where it pushes against the rim. So you've got to break that seal. Sometimes on their older bikes, they were easy. And these newer ones, sometimes they're really tight and a freaking pain in the butt. So that's why having a really good tire leveler is really important. So, I mean, you could always use a flathead screwdriver, right, when we're at home. Butter knives, we've done that before. Not recommended on the trail, though. All right, so we're gonna find that edge. Sometimes you wanna like push. You're gonna have to really break that seal. We had to do it earlier here. It took a while to break that seal. So be patient with yourself if you're on the trail. You're gonna take this, of course we're gonna slip this under, pull it up. You usually like to start right where your valve is at. Then we grab the other one. And Erin showed me this neato trick that you can like use this to hook on your spoke. How cool is that? So anyway, so I'm gonna get in here, pull this off. All right. Great. So I've broken the seal on this. I want to take out that tube. Of course, I can't take it out and take it until I take off this bolt. Try not to lose this bolt in the grass or whatever. If you've got a pocket, put it on there or in your bike kit. So we're going to pull that up and pull that out. So there's your tube. I like to do a check to make sure that I didn't run over a thorn or something like that. If you've got bike gloves, that's more recommended in case you find glass. But essentially, I do a sweep of the whole tire, making sure I'm not finding that thorn that has caused that flat. Also, there's a liner, a lot of them on the bottoms of these bikes, and I want to make sure that's intact. Sometimes it'll slip, and these spoke ends can poke up in there, and it can also be popping your tire. So you want to make sure you got that. Of course, if you're really awesome, you've got some other thicker liners and stuff like that that are tire puncture proofs. Those you might find in there as well. All right, so the old school way of doing this is we're going to pump this up. You want to make sure your pump tip fits the tip on your bike pump or your bike tire. I'm going to pump this up a bit. Want to get enough pressure. Sometimes you can hear that hissing right off. And you're like, oh, shoot, I couldn't see where that's at. So if you can hear it, I like to take a marker or a pen if you have something, some way of marking it, so you know where that hole is. Otherwise, if you've got water at home, you can put this in a tub of water. On the trail, if you've even just got a bottled water or something that you can kind of run it over, you're looking for bubbles to see if you can find out where that is. Sometimes you've just got cracks right around the valve, so check that area too. Check in, check in, check in. Okay, I hear a bubble right here. I'm hearing air coming out. So what I would do, if you've got a little stuff to make it rough up, like a little sandpaper and stuff like that, that's great. And then I would deflate this all the way, take the sticker off this, throw it on here, and make sure it's super flat, no wrinkles. Maybe give it a minute or so, and then I would pump it back up again to check and make sure that that held. Hopefully it's held, it's holding, we look good. So we're gonna deflate it and throw this tube on. If you have a spare tube, then you skip this whole step, of course. Make sure that your tube matches the tube that you need in your bike. That sounds like a no-brainer, but they're all different, so you can't just get a standard top tube. Everything has a circumference and it also has a diameter. So make sure you get a bike that's got your tube matches that. All right, so this is, so I'm just pushing on the end of this to the side and all the air is coming out. Great. And then when I put it back in, I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to start with the stem, which is this. Put that in. Sorry for that dog barking. We have monster dogs in the backyard. So. All right. Put this in. Screw in your pocket. Screw in your pocket. All right. And then I heard a tip online was to inflate your tube up a little bit before you put the tire on. This makes things a little, it keeps it from wrinkling while you're pumping it up. So we're gonna do that. And we're gonna add the nut. What the nut does is it keeps that valve from sliding into the tube and making it a lot harder to pump up. So I'm just throwing it on there. Just loosely. Now a tip I learned from another guy is if you're in the mountains, you can throw this against a tree. I actually have this fake tree right here. We're gonna demonstrate. So we take your stem, which is where you're gonna be pumping, and you just push it against the tree and use that pressure to kind of, to push against while you're inflating the tire. Instead of you're just going like this and pushing against yourself, it's a lot harder. And it allows you to kind of pump up a little faster. All right, so we pump it up a little bit. Then we're gonna go ahead and put the tire back on. Use my tire levers. I strongly recommend that you practice with the tire levers you have in your bike repair kit, because these ones are crappy and I'm gonna get different ones because that's the last place you want to find out is out in the mountains that your tire levers aren't strong enough or pointy enough. That's the other thing. You want this end. You've got the hook end, and then the flat end. That this flat end is pointy enough that can get in there, and that this whole length is not going to just bend, which is what these black ones do. So they're not strong enough. So something that we learned today. Feel free to interject, Erin. I hate that you're all on mute because I want to hear everyone's stories of when you were like 6 and we're trying to, or 10, and all the goat heads we all got when we were younger. Remember, we got to be really good at fixing flats when we were kids.
I remember when I was like 7, I thought it would be a really cool idea to go up this like huge gravel hill that was in front of a neighbor's house. It wasn't a good idea. I totally scraped up my knee. It was quite epic. I think my mom was like, oh my gosh, this child when I walked in the house.
I know there's a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon where Calvin's out of control going down the road on his roller skates. He's like, Hobbs, how do I stop? Hobbs is like, turn into a gravel driveway and fall over. So, yeah, that's the best. Seems like you always manage to find those gravel pits or driveways whenever you're trying to find a way to stop.
Hey, Emily.
I had a bike that had one of those banana seats, but it wasn't bolted on the back. So every time I went over a curve or something like that, I get this nice little jump going on with the seat going off. I don't know why we never thought to like screw it on or something like that, but it was part of the fun.
Just screw it. I know sometimes you're like, I don't know, I kind of like it better that way.
It was more fun.
There's a question, Mare, or whoever that was.
Oh, that was me. Sorry. What's a typical PSI for a mountain bike?
Let's see, for this one we've got,
Go talk to Daddy. Who are you talking with, Myron?
it'll tell you on them.
Is that your team?
I haven't had to change these tires in a long time. Let's see. Huh?
Rotation.
I typically ride a road bike, and so it's.
This one's like a 30 to 45. Yeah, road bikes can get 70 to 130, you know, so significantly less on a mountain bike.
Yeah, I typically ride on anywhere from 90 to 110. So
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting that it's so low, 35 to 40.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just there's more surface area inside the tire. Yeah, and also a good tip is if you're going to be riding in sand, feel free to flatten them a little bit to get more surface area. It's the same idea as like when you're four-wheeling and stuff.
So for mountain bikes, I don't mountain bike a lot, but I spend a lot of time with people that do. It's up to you. It needs to be firm enough that you don't get a pinch flat whenever you run over a lip or something. But if you're planning on going in any snow or sand or anything, you got to let some air out and then be ready to put it back in. If you're going back onto, if you're over gravel, you need a little like medium. If you're going over rocks, you want it really hard so you don't get a lot of compression and get pinch flats on it.
Pinch flat, yeah. What about mud? Was mud similar to sand and snow, or would?
Yeah, with mud, you want more surface area so it increases your traction, and so you let some air out.
Okay.
But you've got to be careful you don't let out too much, because sometimes in mud you're coming up with debris like rocks and sticks that are in that mud, and you don't want to, you know, you want to have some traction enough to get around that too. So.
Exactly. Sorry. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
No problem. All right, because of time, we're just going to speed through this and just let you know that when we're putting this back in, you really want to make sure you line up your disc if you've got disc brakes, that it's hitting in that slide. You also do not want to be pushing the brakes while you're changing that, because it's going to compress those pads. That's a big no-no. So don't even touch your brakes while you're changing your tire, or let your kids do it. All right. And we're going to pull this down. And this poor bike needs a glue job bad. We're going to slide that on that lowest rung, or lowest cog. Try and hit that. Sorry, this lady is a little complicated. And it's going to drop down in there, and you want to make sure it matches up and it looks good. Spin it. Aaron mentioned that these tires are going to say a tire rotation. Do make sure that you put it on the right direction. All right, so that's basic tire repair. Any other questions you have? There's a zillion videos you can watch online. Something else we wanted to go over, just because we're almost out of time, was changing a chain. If you've got a broken chain, it's not the end of the world. It's so easy to fix. So this is my little girl's bike. She broke her chain. If you can see, I don't know if it's broken. And we actually were able to remove the link. So what you do is you have a bike tool like this. And what you do is you set the link in here. The broken link will sit in here, and you're gonna actually use this to screw and push out the pin. You don't wanna push it out all the way, just push it out enough to loosen it, and you can take off those broken pieces, those links, and put in a new link like this. And you can buy new links. You just have to know what size your bike is, but you just throw a new link on like so. At both ends. This is a broken piece, so I'm not going to do it for you. But anyway, it's as simple as just removing the broken link and popping in a new link. Not too hard. The new links will just snap it in. It's just a special kind of link. A lot of times they'll have, this is what we have. I have this in my bike kit, and they're just called, this is just a reusable link, power links. They have all different kinds of names, but essentially, it's something that you can just snap in So you use the chain tool to take out the bad pins, and then you use this to put it back in. You snap this in, and if you need to, some of them you need a chain tool to make sure you got those pins in tight enough. But it's really not that complicated. It's a snap in, snap out kind of a deal. So this I got at Walmart. It's the crappiest thing in the world. Do not make the mistake because it fused and it doesn't twist. But so that would be something that you want to just check on your chain tools, that you know how to, that it's twisting strong enough. Anyway, those are basic repairs. Any questions before we end?
Yeah. So when you talked about putting air into the shocks, like how much air, is there a certain PSI that needs to go in shocks as well? Or, I mean,
that I don't know. I've never done that. And that would be something that I would either look up online or get serviced at a shop. Because I think this bike definitely needs a little bit more air than it has in there. So I would have to research that. I've never done that repair, but it looks like it's pretty straightforward if you just knew what you were doing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a comment. If anybody is in the Springville area, 2 things with bikes. One is there's a group, it's a Facebook group. I recommend checking it out. It's called Hobble Creek Bike Association. Hobble Creek Bike Association on Mondays. They do family bike rides, like little easy ones. Kurt and I have been members for a while now, and they really push to getting more trails around the area. But they also teach bike clinics on Mondays, free in the evenings, where we just go and just learn a little tip or something, just a little bit. And then my number 2 thing I wanted to comment on is also in Springville, there is Noble Sports. You guys know, moved to Spanish Fork, and Springville didn't have a bike repair shop, but we do now. It is called Jolly's Bike Repair. If you know where Snelson's photography is, right across from the fire station, in the basement of Snelson's, just on the north side, is called Jolly's Bike Repair. A guy, Griffin, does the bike repairs, but he's awesome to answer kid questions and little, and chain things and shocks and all those things. And he's very honest and reasonable, $10 for this, or I'll check this out and that'll be $25, or I'll order this part for you. But anyway, just to put helpful local resources. That's all.
And in Lehigh, we've got UtahMountainBiking.com. That's right on Main Street, and they're awesome.
Maryland, does he do tune-ups also? Is it just?
Yeah. So he does everything. He does tune-ups. He rebuilds bikes. He does it all. And I guess the reason I kind of like it is, especially with COVID, every bike shop had a huge, month and a half to repair. And he doesn't, he's still pretty new. So he'll get things, and he has a quick turnaround. And I just felt like he's really reasonable.
Can he do bike fittings at all too? Or do we need to do that at another place?
No, he would do that too. Yeah. If you have your bike and you bring it. Yeah. He doesn't have a bunch of Deluxo 2021 bikes for sale. He's more of a repair guy. And then he also flips bikes and either sells them or donates them to charities and things like that.
So, but he can fit you to a bike?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome.
We also wanted to mention the Bike Collective is also a great place for, for just as bike, if you want to try and learn how to fix your own bike, but just kind of need a few more tools, or just need some people over your shoulder saying, try this, do that. The Bike Collective is a great place, is resource as well. So we'll post after this meeting links for those places so that you guys can use those resources if you need them. Any other thoughts?
Thank you.
Yay! We're so glad to have you guys. So glad that you're here. We just want to reach out and hug everyone. We just love being with you. And if you are interested, we're doing our assistant mountain biking guiding training, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, where we're going to ride up Draper Corner Canyon area. and go up and down a couple routes just so you guys can, we just want to make sure that you're fit enough to be a mountain biking guide. And then we're also going to fix our flats, fix flats on the trail too. So please come join us. That's 9 o'clock in 2 Saturdays as well if you're not doing the first aid class. So I love you so much and have a great night. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.